FCC or something? There's all kinds of people.
I don't know.
Well,
We're just not popular, I guess.
We become popular after the fact when we say, no, you now have to comply. I didn't know about it. It was in the newspaper three times, and to add to it, I emailed the fee schedule to every single person we license. So I have
Every single person that you what? That we
license that we give a permit to. I emailed the proposed fee schedule with an email saying we will be hearing this at the Board of Health.
Yeah.
And I have 142 or so read receipts, so I know they received it.
Now, give me an example of someone who licensed that I'm just not quite sure with you.
So I sent out the email. I sent out the new fee schedule, the proposed fee schedule, to all the restaurants, all the engineers, all the surveyors, all the septic haulers.
So we inspect the restaurants and
Yes.
yeah.
So I sent the email with all the fee schedule to every one of them, and I
Gotcha.
received
Good. Okay.
2 responses, and the document is here. So, but I received over 140 read receipts, so they all read it.
Good.
If they chose not to be here, it's up to them.
Right. I understand. But
Well, it's 4 o'clock. It is 4 o'clock. Quorum is present, so the November 19th meeting, Nantucket Board of Health, is now open. Just to remind you all that this meeting is being recorded visually and by audio means. First item on the agenda is public comments for any issue that's not on the agenda. Seeing no public present, we will move on to the agenda. Next item is the review of the minutes from November 19th. I'm sorry, this is not November 19th. This is December 17th. The meeting of the 17th is open. Comments on the minutes, additions, subtractions, complaints.
I don't have any comments, Mr. Chairman.
Hearing no comments, those minutes are approved by unanimous consent. Next, we have condemnation order 24 Myacomet Avenue.
Yes. So in November, we did an inspection at 24 Myacomet Avenue, also labeled as 16 Myacomet. I believe the order letter that was sent out was in the packet. This is this property has 3 structures co-located there: 2 dwellings, and a 3rd office. When we were there, we found people living in the office structure. It's not permitted as a dwelling. So what I'm asking the board here is to just declare that structure unfit for human habitation, so that in the future this doesn't get re-inhabited. To my knowledge, the people have already moved out, and the structure is only being used as an office again. The condemnation order would prevent. It's a condemnation based on the housing code, which means that this can no longer be inhabited as a house, but it is not condemned as a building. So they can still use the building as an office. It can still be used as storage and things like that.
I have a question. Is that those 3 buildings served with a septic system?
Yes, they are.
One system?
There's 2 systems on the property. The cottage is served by its own 2-bedroom system. The main house and the office is served. I forgot how many bedrooms is on the other system.
And of course, if its repairs are made, it could be uncondemned.
This one is for the office. What I'm asking for is just to declare the office as unfit for habitation. The office building has a loft upstairs that doesn't meet the housing code, so it can't be used as bedrooms.
So does that mean the building would be locked?
No, it's just for the Board of Health. The Board of Health unfit for human habitation, so that people don't live in the dwelling. It can still be used.
And the owner understands she's all right with that?
Yes, I have already spoken to her about it. She says she has no problem with not inhabiting it anymore.
Okay.
She actually expressed interest in reopening her business and using that as an office again.
Okay.
So,
Any other comments from the board?
Just I guess a question. I would have assumed that if it's an office, it was not permitted for habitation already.
mm-hmm.
So this seems like, I guess I don't mind, but it seems redundant in a way. So what's the
it's
issue here?
I understand that it is redundant, and it is. It is redundant, but it's to give the health department the teeth that it needs. So in case it does get relet as a housing, we can actually use the finding procedures set out and the hearing procedures set out by the housing code, which the housing code allows us to find significantly more than what is set by our own standards here.
Okay, so you follow path B or whatever. If we didn't do this, you'd have to follow path A. So there's still a way to do it, but it's more cumbersome.
Correct.
And the fines aren't as high.
Well,
Correct.
she's only allowed 2 dwellings on the same lot anyway, right?
Exactly.
So there's no way she can use it as a dwelling anymore.
It should never be used as. It should have
It
never
shouldn't
been
have
used
been
in
in
the
the first place.
beginning, in the first
Shouldn't have been in the
place.
first place.
Yeah, that's what.
Mhm.
So okay.
Exactly. So in this case, if we declare it unfit as the board, if it ever gets let out again as a dwelling, we can order vacate and secures, where we can padlock the doors. We can also fine up to $1,000 for each violation, which our local non-criminal disposition does not allow.
One other question.
Yeah, keep
So
going.
I guess that, let's say we found 4 more situations where someone was occupying an office in violation of their their certificate of occupancy, I
Mhm.
guess. We would have to, going back to my A and B example, you'd have to use A because we wouldn't have gone through this process. So anybody, I guess we're talking about doing something, anytime someone is non-compliant, we might do the same thing in that situation.
It depends
Do you
on
know what I
the
mean?
on the
Just-
nature of the violation. So there's actually 2 orders on the agenda today. The next one is actually the perfect example that we're trying to that I can use. Is in this case, this structure is just not permitted and set for housing. It is usable. It does meet all the codes. It can be used as an office. The next structure, on the other hand, I'm asking for it to be condemned outright as unsafe for the public as well, which in case we can have it secured, locked, and everything.
Okay. fine.
I just got one more question. It's also a violation of the building code, right?
In this case, no, there are no violations of the building code that we saw. Other than the violations that you have in the order letter.
Well, the violation would be just 3 dwellings on one lot.
That would be their zoning violation that
Okay,
they would.
fine.
Mhm.
Any other comments? Do I have a motion for or against the condemnation of this building? It is an office that has been used for human habitation.
I'll make a motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor
Aye.
of... Go ahead. I say aye. Chairman votes aye. Condemnation is ordered by unanimous vote of the board. You have another one.
So the second condemnation order.
This is Nantucket Auto Body, 3638 Sparks Avenue.
Yes. So in this case, I received a phone call from the police. There was a structure on the property that was being used as a dwelling. I was called out there once the gentleman had been removed based on their own police action. At that time, when I got to the property, I noticed that it was 2 18-wheeler trailers, 2 tractor trailers side by side with a makeshift roof in between the 2 of them and barn doors on each side being used as a dwelling. This structure, you'll see in there, was never permitted even to be built. We have taken a multi-jurisdictional approach on this one. The first step would be on our end. One of the steps on our end would be to condemn this outright and say that the structure is unsafe for the public and human habitation. We have also fined the owner for allowing this to be used as a as a dwelling. When we were there was no heat. The electricity, the wires were all exposed. There was no kitchen facility. There was no toilet facility. There was no running water. It's all enumerated on there. So what we're asking the board is to condemn this as a structure as a whole, and then the building and fire department have already been out there. The building department is having them tear out all the electricity. They can keep the roof as long as it gets properly permitted. And then the fire department has already issued their administrative actions for lack of fire detectors, lack of smokes, and things of such.
Comments or questions?
Maybe just one. This is sort of similar to the last one, but you're looking for a slightly different motion. Is that it?
In this case, I'm asking for a motion to condemn. And by condemning this property outright, we are saying that this structure is unfit for use for any health department purpose.
Right. But we're not saying it's not unfit for storage or something.
Correct.
There's no plumbing or heating or
There's
hot water?
no plumbing, no heat, no hot water. It was
Like bedrooms?
all it was a glorified storage shed
Oh, okay.
with a bed inside it.
Further discussion or questions? Do I hear a motion for condemnation of this? I don't even know how to. It doesn't really have an address. It's
This structure at the location
structure at
of
3638 Sparks Avenue that is present, that was used for habitation.
So I'm happy to make that motion that we
Do I hear-
move to condemn the.
Here a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Chairman votes aye. That structure is condemned.
Okay.
Sort of as just a follow-up, for information, I guess if it stays on the property, two 18-wheelers?
Yes.
So it's up to the building department as to whether or not it can just stay there? So it's sort of like parked storage?
They're metal, they're
So-
the metal containers.
Mhm.
Yeah, so they're just stored there.
They're not, are they on the wheels? Or
No, they're on the-
So they're just the containers?
They're
Yeah,
just the
we
containers on the
containers,
ground.
So the simple permit you get from the building department or just from the town?
So what they would need is to go to the building department and have the structure evaluated if it's even permittable at all. And then if it is permittable, they would have to pull proper permits, get it properly inspected, and permitted as either a storage shed or another functional building of some sort.
Which would be like these hoop structures, for example?
Exactly.
Or we all get a free, 10 by 12
Mhm.
storage
Mhm.
shed, which doesn't count against zoning, but
Exactly.
you have to get a permit.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
That's exactly it.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yes, the one is about natural resource. We have to certify them as agents for the fertilizer regs.
Exactly.
Since the regs were written under our board, but are enforced by others, we have to certify that they're proper agents. Is that correct?
Correct. So just in the same way that we adopted police officers for
Correct.
the purposes of animals,
Mhm.
we will be adopting the natural resources as agents for the fertilizers. So moving forward, I'm sorry, I just realized my bag was in front of you. I just realized we were talking, Jeff Carlson and I were discussing that if the natural resources agent, as it stands right now, were to see somebody applying fertilizer illegally, they would have to refer it to us, and then we would have to either catch them in the act or issue the ticket based on their statement as natural resources. But if we were to adopt the natural resources personnel as agents, they can have the ticket book with them and issue the violation right on the spot as they see it.
It's the same way we did with the police for animals.
Exactly the same.
Okay. Any questions for Roberto?
Is there a plan for enforcement?
Yes, actually, Jeff Carlson and Libby and I have been working together to get a new type of enforcement plan together. We are in the process of hashing that out right now, and hopefully be able to present it to the Board of Selectmen soon, because Mr. DaCosta asked us to give a report, and with that I will also be reporting it to the Board of Health. We are looking to increase our ability to have people out there, and starting Hank Ross, our seasonal inspector, a whole 2 months earlier, so that he can be there when the permits are pulled, and he can meet each person individually and know who he will be dealing with when he gets out there. It's going to be a different approach. Same regulations. We might need to tweak the regulations again in probably March or April, depending on what we see with issues on enforcement.
I have a question. How do you enforce this thing if part of it is voluntary on the owner's part?
So that's actually part of the conversation that Libby, Jeff, and I have been having, that we don't have anything written in the regulation right now that requires the owners to take any responsibility. So one of the ideas that have been thrown out, or one of the ideas that we have been thinking of, was maybe adding an enforcement section in the regulation that says that homeowners should pick from a list of licensed fertilizer or landscapers, licensed fertilizer applicators. If they are working with somebody who is not licensed, after the first warning, they would get a fine for not using a licensed applicator.
But what if I put my own fertilizer in?
Then that is exempt. People putting fertilizer on their own property would be exempt.
So that's just we have to do a little more education.
It would be an educational campaign.
In the spring.
Yes.
I'm having trouble with dates today. In the spring. Any other questions?
Sorry.
Do I hear a motion to make the natural resource personnel as agents of the board, particularly in relation to implement or enforcing the fertilizer regulations? Do I hear a second?
I will second. Okay.
Further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Chairman votes aye. Jeff's people now work for you. Or for us. Okay, we have two variances. First on Regulation 55.02.
For 6 Sakacha?
Yeah, 6 seconds.
Okay. So we have a request for a variance for the Hummock Pond watershed inspection requirement for this location. The soil absorption system, as it stands right now, is actually approximately 180 feet away from Hummock Pond Zone B. It is actually outside of the pond, and that includes the tank and the pump chamber. Everything is outside. The only thing that is inside Zone B is the house itself. So they are asking for relief from this regulation at that point. And I believe Mr. Bracken can probably fill in the gaps for us.
It says proposed main house. Something being built.
That was on the original plan.
That was on the original
Yeah,
plan.
that's the original plan, yes.
And so this is not that dissimilar from Bartlett Farm last
Correct.
time.
Or the one with Heller's Way.
Yes.
Miller's Way.
Exactly.
Yeah, so we have two similar to this.
Mhm.
Anyone wish to comment?
Only if you have any questions.
Any questions from the board?
It seems like the whole system is in Zone B. Am I right?
No,
Tanks, the whole thing, everything.
It's out of the Zone B, correct. Yep.
I guess I had this question on the ones before. So the Zone B line is not really arbitrary. It's based upon
It's based on the actual
drainage.
groundwater.
I forgot the name of the maps.
Right, so it's not just by chance that
Mhm.
that blue line got drawn there.
Right.
There
No,
was
it's
some
not
logic
arbitrary.
to it.
Yes.
Yes.
Other questions?
I think it's not a question. These are the old Horsley Whitney
Yeah,
maps
they're
or
the-
whatever they are.
Right.
I think, are they on the website? Do you know offhand, Roberto? Or we might just double check that.
I have
think
actually
people-
found them before. I don't remember where it was. It was right before I started. I was going through the
Just make a
website.
note. I know they exist. I've seen them in PDF form.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They are floating around the website. I'll just have to
Are they-
locate them.
wherever
and-
they are.
You can
Yeah,
find
okay.
them online
Mhm.
too.
Yeah, okay. It's just good to look at it sometimes.
Mhm.
It reminds you of the source for all this data. So
Right.
Yeah.
I actually, about 2 years ago, I read through all that the best I could. All right. I don't see any great problem with this. It's consistent with how we've acted before. So, do I hear any other comments? Do I hear a motion to approve or disapprove the variance?
I'd make a motion to grant the variance as requested.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of granting the variance, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. Variance is granted.
Okay.
17 Comet Road.
Yes, this is
I'm
a.
going to recuse myself on this one because I'm working on the same property
Okay.
for the owners.
Okay. So this is a request for a variance from the regulation to add one bedroom with an IA to this property. The property right now is 40,000 square feet, which the way the regulation is written limits it to one bedroom per 10,000 square feet. However, since this property is serviced by town water, the nitrogen from the wells is no longer a factor. It's coming in without nitrogen from the water, from the town water, as well as this being on the edge of Zone B. We see no real impact with the watershed, so we would recommend the approval in this case.
Mr. Bracken, comment?
The only comment I would have is this is kind of new territory for us too. So I don't think I've seen this particular variance requested before. So what we did do in the application was we calculated the nitrogen loading based on the existing 4 bedrooms with no treatment, and then we calculated it with the 5 bedrooms with the treatment using the 50% reduction in the nitrogen load. And so the actual reduction, even though we're adding a bedroom, but with the IA, there'll be an overall 37.5% reduction. The other things I wanted to point out is that the distance between the system and the actual water surface of head of Hummock Pond is 2,470 feet. And the groundwater separation is about 21 feet from the bottom of the system.
Mr. Reed, I see you standing there.
I'm just in league with Mr. Bracken, and likewise happy to answer any questions representing the
Questions from the board.
Question. Is this, now that town water is in Nantucket,
Mm-hmm.
I mean in Hummock Pond, would we be looking any more of this stuff coming by?
And all of these anyone that is in a watershed district would need to request the variance for any additional bedrooms. In this case, they are adding an IA system, which is technically not required in Zone B. So this is actually being above and beyond the work.
That makes me happy. Go on. Question, Rick?
Well, just to make sure I understand, when you say it's technically not required in Zone B, what are you referring to?
So in the regulation that we have so far, not Regulation 64, but correct me if I'm wrong, 56. Zone B of Hummock Pond watershed does not require IA systems either upon failure or transfer or things like that. We are merely limiting the bedroom count to one bedroom per 10,000 square feet. If this were Zone A, on the other hand, we would require IA.
That was about 2 years ago we passed that. We had that long discussion about A and B, and we opted to just include A and not B in that requirement.
So could you, just be helpful to me to understand what, because I've been more focused, I guess, on 64 since I've been on the board. And the geographic location for this lot is different.
Yes.
And subject to a different regulation.
Yes, it's different than the watershed. I mean, the harbor watershed.
Okay. And what's the Section A regulation call for, if it can be described briefly, to maybe reminding the others, but...
So in this case, with this being the Hummock Pond watershed, if they were located in Zone A, we would require an IA system upon failure or upgrade or anyway. This is located in Zone B. So Zone B, Regulation 56, only requires the limitation of the bedroom count to one bedroom per 10,000 square feet. In this case, what we're asking for...
Art? Yeah, I mean, Zone A is very much like...
Zone A, if you're on town water,
Right.
Yes.
you're
town
not,
water.
you're not
Exempt. Right.
You know, you're going to have to, from the one for every 10,000. You're not
Right.
exempt from that. But if you exceed one for 10,000 anywhere in that zone, an IA is going to be required.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So it's
For the nitrogen loading.
yeah. So in this case, they're requesting the bedroom credit
They're asking
for only one
they're
bedroom, even
asking
though
for
they
one
would
bedroom.
qualify for two.
In an IA system.
This would be a bedroom credit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
My question is, actually, they don't need to put an IA system in, right?
If they want the extra bedroom, they need the
Okay,
IA.
So then, as people come in the same situation, are we going to require an IA system?
We should. Yes,
We
we will.
Well, okay, just so I know that from now on, there will be an IA system.
In any way, if they were going to exceed the one bedroom per 10,000, they would require an
Okay,
IA.
fine. Okay.
And if I may, in this particular case, as Mr. Bracken indicated, there is a net benefit as a result of what we're doing here. We're adding a bedroom, but by putting in the IA system, the result will be that there will be less nitrogen loading than would be the case if we just kept it the way it was with the 4 bedrooms.
Right.
We get a bedroom out of it. You got a net benefit of there being less nitrogen coming out of the system than there now is.
Correct.
Any further questions?
Yeah, just, or I guess a comment, or try to understand again. So this is different from the so-called bonus lots we've been issuing permits for. Because I'm trying to understand. So if someone was in Tom Nevers, just to pick a spot, and they were putting up a new house on an acre, 40,000 square feet,
Mm-hmm.
they could have a 4-bedroom and have a Title V regular system.
Correct.
Would they be able to ask for an extra bedroom if they put in an IA system?
Yes.
And that's what I think. Maybe the use of the term bonus lots is inappropriate, but and that's been sort of a standard practice.
That's
I believe
becoming our standard practice.
Well, but I think it has been a practice for some time, right? It's not as if we're starting a practice today.
No.
It's not automatic.
It was a practice prior under the last direct.
Mhm.
Correct. Then it was brought before you, this board, and you wanted to hold the mark on 1 bedroom for every 10,000.
I'm not quite. Well, go ahead.
So we're in an area where, you know, we had those issues with North Road, and, you know, we've heard from quite a few people, and, you know, we're looking for some direction from you.
Well,
where
let's.
you wanna go.
Yeah, and we'll get to that because you're talking about different areas now. I
Mhm.
picked my example purposely out of the Harbor
Mhm.
Watershed Protection District, and that's where it's been my understanding is that, you know, you may not find it written down, but permits were issued with a certain amount of regularity for IA systems with 5 bedrooms
Mm-hmm.
on 40,000 square feet around the island.
In and out of harbor water.
In and out of the harbor, I understand. So what we're seeing here is this is a little bit of a hybrid because it's not a new dwelling. It's not a new system. It's an existing house and we're dealing with an additional bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to and I just sort of go through this a little bit again because we're going to have these, it's going to keep coming up, let's just put it that way.
Yes.
And we're going to have to deal with what we do in the Harbor Watershed District as one geographic area which has special characteristics which are different from my Tom Nevers example
Mm-hmm.
or than this one. This is not in that district.
Exactly. So before the regulations that we have now, before that regulation, the staff would have had unilateral ability to just approve the IA with the extra bedroom.
And now until we have some further formal delegation. We plan to bring these to the board to develop our own consistency
prefer.
of approach.
I like that because
Which I prefer. It codifies it.
We can be consistent.
Right, good. I
Mhm.
just wanted to go
Yeah,
through that. Thank you.
absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Do I have a motion for or against the variance for 17 Wycomic?
Well, I make a motion, we approve.
Do I hear a second? The motion present is to approve the variance. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
You know, I'll vote in favor, but I want to be clear in my own mind that we don't, and specifically for the Harbor Watershed District, and maybe I think we all know we're not creating precedent for that area.
No, we're not.
No.
But I'd like it to be reflected in the minutes that we're consciously not doing that. Okay? So,
Fine.
If I could make a suggestion as to how you ought to be looking at this, I think, is in every case, it's a matter of your discretion as to whether you grant a variance. And in each case, I think you should consider all the facts. Every case is different. And you should consider always whether there is, in fact, a net benefit. If there is a net benefit, then I think it's appropriate that you grant the relief. If you don't find that, obviously, then I certainly understand that it wouldn't be something that you would want to grant. But as I say, I think every case needs to be looked at as a different one, and I think net benefit is a key factor for you to consider.
I think for the most part we do that. So the motion is still on the floor and seconded. All in favor? The motion was made to grant the variance. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Aye. Chairman says aye. The variance is granted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have an ACO.
Yes. There's an ACO on the floor for it. Actually, let me pull up the information. The ACO we have is for 199 Nantucket Road. There is a technical failure of the property here. The system is functioning. It's just they're willing to get into the ACO so that they can start escrowing the money for when sewer comes down. Straightforward. We're looking for approval.
So I don't see a map for 199, but this is this in Nantucket? It would help?
Yeah.
It's on Nantucket Road. It's
Yes.
one,
Right.
Out over
I can
the second
visualize
bridge.
Over the
where
second
about
bridge.
199 would be.
All right, thanks.
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions
No.
on this ACO?
No.
Do I have a motion to approve or not approve the ACO for 199 Nantucket Road?
Sure, motion to approve.
Mr. Atherton made a motion. Second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor of granting an ACO for 199 Nantucket Road, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chairman says aye. It is granted. Now we have efficiency here.
Looks like somebody wants to pick up a piece of paper.
Where's,
We don't want to chase the chairman.
so it's my fault, huh?
I understand. After a board meeting last night, we have to stay and sign, hundreds of these liquor licenses.
Okay, we have coming up shortly a hearing,
Hearing. Yes.
open public hearing on
Fee
some
schedule.
changes in fees. You want to give us a little background before we open the hearing?
So what I did is I did a comparison of fee schedules over 7 other cities and 7 other towns. Actually, I specifically chose towns of similar size departments, similar budgets. The whole first page of the fee comparison schedule that I sent in explains the towns and everyone I did. For the record, I did a review of Northborough, Tisbury, Edgartown, Andover, Hudson, Reading, Westford, and Provincetown. When I did that comparison of all those fee schedules, I compared on 3 levels: food permits, general permits, which are things like pools, tobacco, things like that, lodging, and then I also did septic permits. So they're separated in all 3 tiers in your packet. I'm sorry that the font might actually be a little small and hard to read.
Well, I was going to say, Mr. Health Officer, for some of us, this was these were a little challenging to read.
Yes, I sent it out there was also the Excel sheet that I sent out before last meeting that you'd be able to go cell by cell I should have probably had computers brought in order to zoom in. But ultimately, what I found was that we have been severely undercharging on some major permits, and actually downright not charging on other types of permits. And in the comparison, you'll see that I had compared these permits, and I am suggesting more or less a middle ground on the fees in order to be fair to the users.
Well, some might say we're just a nice town.
There is nice town, and then there is giving away the farm, and right now we have been giving it away.
Do you have the difference in the fees from what they are now? Are these the new fees, or is this the amount that fees going to go up?
The difference, actually, I have in the other pages, the one that's from the Excel sheet, the ones that are a little small. On the top, the very first row is the current fee schedule that we have for Nantucket. The top row. So, for example, currently we only charge $50 for a beach. We charge $100 for an in-holder, $100 for a lodging house, and then the proposed fees on the bottom highlighted in yellow.
Okay. So let us open the public hearing. The public hearing is now open in relation to the change in fees from the Health Department. Is Mr. Barnes?
Curtis Barnes. I shared this fee schedule with my plumber this morning, and he noted that there is a $100 fee for an ejector pump, and my understanding, or I think his was, that that's normally a plumbing fee, not a health department fee. So I'm just trying to figure out, is that a new fee? Is it under plumbing? Is it under health, or both?
That fee has actually been on the fee schedule for definitely as long as I've been here. I don't know how long it's been on here.
Well, they've been paying it, but do they pay it through their plumbing?
No. It's also a fixture in a plumbing permit. You pay for it as a fixture in a plumbing
But
permit.
it already has been on the health department fee schedule.
It has been all the years I was in business, yes.
Okay. Well, I'm just trying to figure out whether we're paying twice or going to pay twice, or who's paying it.
Does it matter whether it's septic or sewer?
It does matter because you can only pump so much to a septic tank. So it has to be verified through the plan that they're not exceeding that. And if you go too much, you've got to get DEP approval. So there is some rhyme to the reason for this permit coming through our office as well as the plumbing office.
Right.
That's the question.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't know the answer yet.
What is it?
Well, what is the answer?
So the answer is that it's always been on
It's
the fee
always been
schedule.
here.
Yes. Yes, it's always been on the fee schedule.
Let me ask you a question. Not to, I know it's always on a plumbing permit, so we know there is one. Where does it show up on a building permit?
It actually also shows up on all the septic permits. We have it on our design plans. It tells us what pump it is. It shows us the pumping curve, whole 9 yards, where it's located.
Are there other public comments? If I have no objection, we'll close the public hearing. Hearing none, the public hearing is closed. Comments, questions from the board?
There was one suggestion that was made via email for a gentleman who couldn't be here today. His firm is off island. He has requested that we can consider the plan review permit for the building review. He feels that doing the $20 permit, not $20 permit, but review fee would be the double charging. The concept that Mr. Barnes just brought up of would they be paying twice for the same review. In staff's experience, we have actually reviewed over 200 of these permits per year, and they take between 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on how the complexity of it, and we are currently doing all of that for free. So I have put that fee in the fee schedule, but it is the board's
So what's
decision.
the math of $20 times
The 200, that's 4,000. Yes.
$4,000?
ultimately.
We're trying to relate, I assume, to some extent, the fee to the time or the effort
Correct.
put into the issue. Right?
As
So if you're working 45 minutes or up to 45 minutes,
Mhm.
$20 is just a portion of it.
is just a portion of that. Actually, it's
So that's
when-
actually a pretty fair fee.
It's a very fair fee, considering that we also have the work from the office manager as well as the person reviewing. The person hours that go into this is easily into the 2-hour mark.
Have you made an estimation if these increased fees are approved, how much additional revenue the department would receive?
Yes, the additional revenue is roughly in the ballpark of $40,000.
So you could hire another person,
Definitely, or make our seasonal person full time for year round,
potentially.
potentially.
Just don't get carried away. As people like to say, the fees go into the big pot in the middle. And
I know they go in the big pot, and your board will ultimately decide
I'm
what
just
to
sort of kidding.
do with that money. Other questions or comments? They seem generally reasonable to me.
Yeah, I mean, I must say that's my first reaction is that they don't seem excessive in any specific case, at least it jumps out to me.
So to put it in perspective, Tisbury charges $500 for their tobacco permit. We were currently charging $50.
Who charges $500?
Tisbury.
Oh,
Well, that's probably a calculated effort to dissuade.
Mhm.
So maybe we had to charge
In-
$5,000.
In Framingham, I was charging $300.
Yeah.
okay.
So that's one you don't have to be so gentle on.
It's only 150 now.
Yeah,
Why
we
are we doing that? It's probably not worth it at the moment.
All right. No additional comments. No additional comments from the public. Do I have a motion? And do I hear anyone that wants to amend any of these fees before we vote on the whole package? Is there one that's not correct? And Mr. Barnes understands the answer to this question.
question about the $20 review thing too. Where do we pay it? I mean, we sent it to the building permit. I just don't understand how the $20 gets into the
Yeah,
system.
who collects it? Where is it? What form?
It's the same concept. Though when the builder goes to do the permits, they're actually required to go to the office, per office. So when they get to the health department, at that point is when the fee would be paid.
I'm gonna write a separate check for $20 when I walk in the door.
Correct.
That's sort of a pain.
Maybe you could work with town administration. Wouldn't it be nice to have people like Mr. Barnes
We're-
go to one place and
We're
write one
actually
check?
we're currently working on an e-permitting software. We're looking to see who a vendor can be, and in that case, the person would check off everything that applies for them,
Mhm.
and then they would pay it all in one large fee, and the software will allocate it accordingly. We're hopefully only a few months away from that, but we're currently working on that to make it as easy and painless as possible.
I would encourage something like that.
Mhm.
All right. Hearing no one wishing to make amendments to the fees specifically, do I have a motion to approve or not approve the new fee schedule?
I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the
Mr.
fee schedule
Atherton.
as presented to the board and discussed at the public hearing.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Do I hear further discussion? All in favor of the new fee schedule, say aye.
Aye.
Chairman votes aye. The fee schedule is approved. And I encourage the town to work on a unified, one-stop collection system.
Yeah, I will say, as a selectman, I hear a number of people coming on that problem.
Yeah, we're definitely
And it's not
working
just
on
the
that.
fee; it's the physical process of having to go to hither, thither, and yon. So
Exactly.
it's if we get a new town building out here, that might help alleviate some of this. We'll have to see. So,
Well, no one
but
can
it's a
find.
common problem.
The way your offices are now, I doubt that anyone can find you hidden back there in the woods.
Chairman?
Yes.
Can I reinforce what Mr. Atherton said? To have to go down where there's no parking to get in there, we used to turn it in at the around the corner here, and it would go to a desk in one office, and it'd all be processed in the same place. That's a real pain in the neck, so Mr. Atherton is right on, and let's do something to put them back together.
Right. I think the board endorses that position. And
Well, so does the staff.
we'll follow up on that. Director's report.
So the venison donation program was up and running. So far, we have received, as of this morning, there were 7 deer that were donated. A little bit lower than what we were expecting, but at the same time, we can definitely expand and we can improve upon the program. There, as of right now, there has been a little over 100 pounds donated to the pantry.
I heard 200.
200?
Somewhere.
So I missed the. Yeah, it was 100 confirmed this morning.
Okay.
Actually, a little over 100 pounds. One of the issues that was found is actually the location of impact, where the slug hits, actually destroys that whole section of meat. It gets bruised, it gets shredded. There's damage to it, and that can't be used for the processing, so that depending on where the deer was actually hit, there is some loss of meat actually, and that was an unforeseen obstacle in this. However, both the food pantry and the processor have expressed interest, and the donor has expressed interest in making this program continue, and we can definitely start doing the campaign, pushing for the information earlier this coming year. The only thing that made it a little bit slower and the rollout slower this year was we needed approval from the state, which we only got maybe a week into archery season. So it was, in many ways, already a little too late to get some of the information out. We are expecting the program to really roll out successfully next year.
But you mentioned to me the state has actually come and inspected us.
Yes, the state was here last Thursday to be exact. They came to inspect. They even brought an avid hunter with them who also happens to be a state inspector. They were really impressed with the program. They went to the tagging station as well as to the processor. They were really happy with what they saw. They were really excited, and they're looking to maybe expand this across the state, push this information out, and see how many other towns can actually get on board with this. This is definitely something to be proud of in this town. The staff and the previous director and the board here definitely deserve a lot of credit for getting this program up and running.
Now, that was only for the 2 weeks of shotgun.
Just
right?
just shotgun.
But didn't you say they're going to let it go the complete season?
We are allowing them to donate until the Marxes can't anymore, which for them they've asked that they would finish on December 24th because they will be out of town the 25th through the 31st.
Right. So will it start? Will it go the whole length of archery season?
Next year we can have, as long as the processor and the food pantry are willing to work on that time, we can have it from the very first day of archery all the way through to the end of primitive firearms.
That's a total of what, about 8 weeks as opposed to 2?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And can we get advertising out sooner?
And we can get it out sooner than last year, and we can definitely work on outreach campaigns and getting it out to.
If you need funding for advertising, I'm sure.
Oh,
Fine.
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we're really happy to see that. I have actually put in for a grant right now from the CDC. Hopefully we can get it approved. We'll know sometime in the first week of January to fund a CDC intern for the summer to do work on some of the epidemiology on tick-borne disease and wastewater. Specifically those tools, an environmental health graduate student intern that would be paid for by the Federal Department of Health and Human Services. If we were to get this approved, and if we do get that, they would be able to set up an entire program, entire tracking system, enforcement processes on fertilizer, wastewater, and the epidemiology for tick-borne diseases, working close with the hospital so that we can really get our hands around what and how and when and where we can grasp these issues. If they would be able to lend a perspective that we don't currently have as the people on the island, having an online perspective on some of these diseases and some of these illnesses on the island would be invaluable. So I would hear about that in January. And then we applied and were approved and granted for a grant from the state to purchase a electronic vehicle. The Board of Selectmen yesterday approved the contract, which is why it wasn't announced earlier. The state electric vehicle incentive program is providing us with monies to offset the costs of purchasing an electric vehicle for the health department. So for the price of a normal gas vehicle, we will be getting a electric vehicle, a hybrid electric and gasoline vehicle that actually has the ability to switch on and off. So the one we're looking at right now is the Ford Fusion or the Ford C-Max. The ability of that car would be that they can turn off the gas engine altogether. We would be able to just turn off the gasoline and we would have zero emissions whenever we are out doing inspections, going to meetings, anything like that. So we're really proud to announce that. And we're actually the first individual department to have it, even though the town right now has, I believe, the announcement was 12 electric vehicles registered to the town of Nantucket. We would be the first inspectional department to have one.
They're not registered to the town itself. They're registered to people on the island.
On the island, okay.
This would be the first electric car the town
has, so
and
even better.
Just so we understand, the grant is for $5,000. The car costs $30,000.
The car costs
so
$30,000 in
the
total.
The town is very nicely found a pocket someplace to ante up the rest of this,
which is
the new fees.
Which is fine.
It's from the new
so
fees.
we understand.
Well, actually, you are correct. The $5,000, it would be it's the offset grant. It offsets the cost of the electric. It's the difference between the price of a normal gas car and the electric car that they're covering. But the funds that they did find is actually through the Cape and Islands Fund,
which is not the normal.
It's not the normal
source where we buy cars from.
Exactly.
Usually it comes out of somebody's capital budget.
Yes.
So I'm sort of kidding here, but you should understand there had been a resistance by town for various reasons to acquiring electric cars.
Why?
Well, you heard, they're not strong enough to go through the sand, and they're not strong enough to be police vehicles, and I could go on from there if I could remember all the other no's. There were a lot of no's, so I'm glad we have a yes. Thank you.
We definitely have a yes here, and we're very proud to say we're the first. So those three, and then there was something else that I put in my report, and I honestly don't remember now, and I should have written it down in front of me. But we are actually, the office is moving forward. I'm looking. That's what it was. I'm actually currently right now looking into the feasibility of setting up our own strategic plan. I'm looking at both templates to do it individually internally, so that there'd be no cost to the town. That way, we can have at least in some way 1 or 2 year plan of what we're going to do, looking at processes, how can we improve processes, how can we improve our face with the town, and how can we get outreach and work out there, increase efficiency, and lower our costs to the town. So if things go really well, hopefully things can go really well, and I can get that strategic plan to you within the year.
There are a lot of strategic planners I know on the island.
Strategic planners can be a little expensive.
I was just thinking if I could twist one of them to some community service.
I have some experience with strategic planning myself, so I was looking to do some of it at no cost to the town. But if I would always accept help.
I will explore with a couple of people.
Excellent, thank you.
I know one in particular that's very, very good, and probably for this particular type of thing.
Thank you. And then lastly, one of the things that I've wanted to mention is at the end of January into February would be my 6 months here as the director. So I will be requesting for the February meeting for a review of my progress so far from the board, and hopefully a performance review issue at that point.
We will do that. And for the performance of the board, we have talked, and we've never really got to this, is having a workshop to talk about some of these issues. And I've been struggling with that I don't know if I want to get into a spot where we'll say, if the system is 180 feet from the blue line, and it turns out to be 175, and I know you're looking for direction, but we have to be careful about.
Absolutely.
We're not creating more regulations that should be policy. So, if anyone has any ideas on how to do that, so we don't get ourselves mired, that's my concern.
You want to refer back to where that came from? I mean,
Well, it's been discussed, and the staff has asked us a couple of times to get some policy.
Are we back on the septic variance
Yeah.
issue? Just to make sure I know what
Yeah, I'm
the
sorry,
lines
back
were
on the septic variance
related to,
issue.
yeah.
And
Yeah, no, I think that's a difficult subject, because I hear someone like Arthur, every variance is unique and all that, but there are some common elements.
Right.
And there's some
and
perceived equities and so on. So it's not as
I
simple.
think we've been pretty consistent. at least in the
Absolutely.
last
We've definitely been pretty consistent in the last few
between
meetings.
64 and 56. So.
Mhm. No, we've definitely made some real progress and consistency, and I really don't expect major variances and major issues like the North Road issue
Does
again.
the staff want such a workshop, or does the board want such a workshop? And we talk about it, but it's a nice thing, but I don't want to do a nice thing if we just sit around and look at each other.
One of the issues as far as the workshop would go is we would definitely have to go into the workshop with all the issues already pre-written, so that we can know what to discuss. To go into a workshop blind would
No, I
not be
would
my
never do that.
recommendation. So unless Art would like to say anything else to that. Yeah.
No, I think it's a good idea. I mean, I would like a workshop with some of these issues that we do have discretion on, so that maybe we could limit the number of people, because you would set it back.
Right.
Are we through the sort of the in-between folks, as far as you know, or there's still a few more out there?
To my knowledge, we should be through that. We've made past that major hurdle with the Nantucket Harbor watershed. The only one that we're hearing a little resistance on right now is the septic to sewer. There was a specific sewer line that was put in, and some people don't agree with the way it was put in, but ultimately the town did adopt it. When I spoke with DPW, the town did adopt that sewer. It is a current town sewer, and we do maintain it. So whether the folks on that specific sewer line like that or not, well, ultimately the regulation says that they have to connect
Is there a
to that
reason
one.
you don't just mention the road so we get it all out? And, I mean, if you don't want to, I might make up one I know might be.
You might be the one that's on the okay. The road that has been getting most questions on right now is Duke's Road,
It's Duke's Road, right? Because they ran the sewer all the way to the end.
all the way to the end.
And this was, we had the John Mickelson line 15 years ago,
Yep.
Steve, and this line, picked up the in-between, and it may have picked up people on Mickelson's line because maybe they weren't able to hook in for capacity. I don't know.
Yeah,
You
that
know what
line
I'm trying
was
to get at?
line was limited. Now they're I think they got tied into that main line that was just put in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe everybody's on the same line.
Everybody's
now
going to be on the
Mhm.
same.
on this the
yeah.
capacity.
Was all figured.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good to hear.
Yeah.
So right, I've heard a little bit about, just a little bit. That people, this is an interesting problem that's going to come up, just to sort of share with everybody. When a private party puts in a sewer line, which is what happened here, and it's not in, I think, of the original needs areas, essentially Nantucket and the Harbor District, who then is going to be required, one, to pay, and two, are hookups going to be required? And hookups involve fees, because they involve the privilege fee, they may involve the capacity fee, let alone the $2,000 fee, and there are a lot of things involved in this, and the people along Duke's Road, didn't ask for it,
Mhm.
and it just showed up, essentially.
Absolutely.
No, I could tell you that people are reluctant to change.
Yeah.
And 3/4 of the people, they're in the Hummock Pond watershed down there, and
It's true.
3/4 of the houses down there, they're not going to pass the septic
Right.
anyways. So
So they're lucky.
they're
in a
lucky.
way.
That's what right. Hook up.
Somebody paid for,
Yep.
here we're dealing with a question on sewers, extensions, betterments or tax base.
Mhm.
Here, someone else paid for the line.
Yes.
So the people on that road aren't faced with a betterment for
Right.
their
Yeah.
specific
And
sewer
they're in
line.
Hummock Ponds, Chad.
And there are a lot of issues floating around here, but it's a good example.
Mm-hmm.
And there are others. I mean, we put some lots into the sewer district last year, out Tacoma and down Bayberry,
Mhm.
as an example. And never quite sure why that happened, but anyway, it did. And it's going to, if someone on Bayberry at the end wants to pay for the sewer line, we're going to have the same question for all the folks down Tacoma and Bayberry.
Mhm.
So,
The difference is Duke's Road is a public way and County Road, Bayberry's a private road. So the person paying to bring the sewer down to the very end basically owns the line.
right,
That's
and that's going to be an issue because the sewer commissioners have to face an issue. Do they want to allow private lines to exist?
Mhm.
They don't have to. I think they have the power to, in effect, force that line to be donated to the sewer system.
They should. They should.
Yeah.
I mean, the benefit is to the guy down the end. He wanted to bring it down. I think even the private road, they should have to turn it over to the town. That policy needs to be. That needs to be set because it's an
Well,
issue.
we will let
And we
the
have a
sewer
lot
commission
of,
deal with that.
Yeah.
So what I would just ask the staff, if you could start kind of preparing your questions.
Okay. For a workshop.
So we have a workshop that's meaningful.
Absolutely.
could I just follow up here one more time?
Yeah.
Because this is something coming to the board, the Board of Selectmen. So you can sense all the issues that come out of individual situations, and it just seemed to me that our posture in requiring hookups, and that's within our purview, not the Board of Selectmen's purview. The Board of Selectmen can get into who pays for it and who's going to own it and
Mhm.
a lot of stuff. But if someone on Duke's Road came in and said, I want a variance and don't want to hook up, we need to think about what our posture on that is going to be. And to me, that seemed to be separate from the issues that the board faces. And the board had a discussion of this very briefly, I think, 3 weeks ago. And I think in the minds of some people, they said, oh, that's a Board of Health issue.
Mhm.
But only one small part of this
Only
is a
one
Board
portion
Health,
of it.
I think.
Mhm.
So we all need to think about how we're going to react to that. Because one response is, why not hook up?
Mhm.
And why should we give that up? Even if it's a private line on a private
Mhm.
road, it's for the public health benefit to require hookups.
Absolutely.
And if that gets into fees and other things, that's sort of not
So
our
that's not our.
problem,
Right.
And
So,
and along those lines as well, when the question has been brought up in the office, we've had to reiterate that this regulation has been on the books for over 10 years now.
yeah, it was really interesting that when that was brought forward, I think some
Mhm.
people have felt, oh, it's just part of this recent
Yeah, no.
harbor watershed subject, but it's not.
No, it's
Yeah,
not.
It happened with the Monomoy sewering that
Mhm.
went into effect in
Yeah.
2004.
And they didn't enforce that.
Just nobody right. Right.
So there were people out in Monomoy where we really need hookups for the harbor,
yeah.
and 10 out of 12 didn't hook up, or whatever the number was. And we, as the Board of Health, in existence at that point,
Right.
didn't enforce that. So,
I just want to have one comment. I'm getting a lot of calls from real estate brokers, and I talked to Roberto about this, and I think the Board of Health and the Health Department needs to share all these changes that are going through
Right.
with the real estate,
community.
the Nantucket Real Estate Board, because the brokers that are buying and the brokers that are selling to clients need to know. Like, for instance, the North Pasture thing that we made that guy put you in. I have a friend that lives next door, and his house is on the market. And he called me up from Connecticut. And, he was very nice about it. But he said, can you tell me what's going on? So I said, yeah. And I told him, I said, you're going to have to do an IA system and the whole thing and like that. And he said, all right. He said, I would think my real estate broker would have known that. But, that's a lot of people that you're talking about. There's probably 150, 175 real estate brokers that have clients. And when it gets to buying and selling, what they find out they have to do, all of a sudden the whole deal can become a mess. And so I asked Roberto if he would talk to the board.
I think that's great.
Yeah,
we
you
really
did-
do have
you
to
did-
deal with that. I get the same,
Yeah.
not as many as you would get, but a couple of issues.
You did talk to the builders, though.
Yes, and I had a generally positive response. I
So,
don't know what everyone else has heard.
Right.
Go talk to those 150.
Absolutely,
I think
we've
that's
already been
excellent.
approached, and I believe
and
it's.
I think you would. I don't think there'd be any pushback at all. I
And-
think what they need, all they really need, is the information.
We've already been approached, and we have I believe it's scheduled for the 13th of January.
Oh, good.
So
To go to the Board of
to go to the Board
Yeah,
of
at the
Realtors at
fairgrounds.
Fairgrounds here.
All right.
Good.
Yeah, because, if you start a process with someone who wants to buy or sell, they know right at
Right up
the
front.
get-go.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Okay, anything else? Problems with the board, questions? And if I have no objections, the meeting is closed.
Thank you.
Curtis.
Awesome, thank you.
Got a call back. One fellow called and said, just 3 months ago, I put in I think he must have had an inspection.
Where you are, don't worry.
And
I've been working with these
failed.
guys for 30 years.
Regular